All right, happy Monday, everyone. We are going to review what happened in the NFL yesterday. So, right off the bat, early games, terrible on my game picks, absolutely bad. I think I only got one of the early games right. I had the Cleveland Browns beating the Indianapolis Colts, and they, in fact, did so. There was some controversy with some calls that were um, at the end of the game. One, obviously, on a very uncatchable ball, should not have been called. Could have affected the game, could have changed the game, but it's it's one of them things where I always tell people I try, and I've had calls go against my team, I've had calls help my team, and it's one of them things where it's like, you know what goes around comes around. Like, yeah, you may catch the short end of the stick one week or here or there, but every now and then you're going to catch the other end of it. You're going to be on the good side of it. So it's hard to complain. I mean, I know you want to complain, but there is some human error in the game, and you can't make every single thing reviewable, although some things definitely should be reviewable. And with obviously with this case, after the call, after the flag was thrown, referees should huddle up, talk about it, and maybe even have the replay officials upstairs have an input in that conversation of, hey, this ball is absolutely uncatchable. Like, that's something maybe the NFL should consider, to not necessarily make everything reviewable, but at least have on things like this nature, of where a referee throws a flag, have a replay official have the ability to communicate with the refs and say, hey, this really wasn't the right call. I mean, because referees see it in real time. They have to make a judgment call in a split second, and you can't fault them for that. Like, they're not perfect. But if you're going to have a conversation afterwards, have someone that has the ability to take a second look at it, because referees can't look at the replay unless it's a challenge. But have someone that has that ability to be like, look, that ball was like 10 yards down the field. There's no way he was catching that. It was several yards out of the back of the end zone. There's no way he could have caught the ball and touched his toes in bounds. So maybe that's something they should look at. But either way, I got the game right with Cleveland. I had Buffalo beating New England. Didn't happen. Washington beating New York. Didn't happen. Detroit beating Baltimore. Didn't happen. The Raiders beating the Bears. Didn't happen. And Tampa Bay beating Atlanta. Didn't happen. And also had the Rams beating the Steelers. Didn't happen. Another controversial call in that one. Looked like the tush push for the Steelers was absolutely like a half yard short. Terrible spot by the ref. They measured it. It was enough for a first down. Never should have come to that. Um, Again, it's unfortunate, but sometimes you're on the short end of the stick, sometimes you're not. I had Seattle beating the Cardinals. Did happen. I had Denver beating Green Bay. Did happen. Chiefs beating the Chargers. Correct. And Philly beating Miami. Also correct. Tonight I have the 49ers beating the Vikings. Should be correct, but we will see later tonight. Now, a couple things to talk about. What is wrong with the Buffalo Bills? Because after week one, we were talking about them like they were just a terrible team. They're trashed. Like, what's going on with them? What's going on with Josh Allen? And they bounced back in week two. They played good for a week or two. They beat Miami. I believe it was week 3 or 4, after Miami put up 70 on the Broncos the week before. And all of a sudden we're talking about Buffalo like they're the potential team to knock off Kansas City in the AFC. They go to London, have a letdown, come back from London, barely scrape out a win against the Giants with a backup in, and then they play like this. Yet they didn't play very well yesterday against New England. Side note on this, Bill Belichick did get his 300th career win, making him the third coach in NFL history to do so. Congrats to him. I would say I'm a pretty decent Bill Belichick fan. I think he's a phenomenal coach. So congrats to him for sure. Now Buffalo, obviously they've lost one of their better members in the secondary with injuries, and that is affecting the way they play defense. And honestly, with the way Mac Jones and New England's offense has looked the last 2 to 3 weeks, which obviously one of those games was against Dallas, very good defense, but the other games, like the game against the Raiders, not that great of a defense. I mean, they've got some good players and they can rush the passer, but Mac Jones looked terrible in that. He's looked really bad in a lot of games, and for Buffalo to allow him to look that good, they obviously have some defensive issues. And Sean McDermott being a defensive coach, that's really not a good sign. Belichick also being a defensive coach, being very familiar with McDermott, being familiar with the Bills, I think he was able to put a decent defensive game plan in place, and they were actually able to slow him down for the most part. Buffalo did make a comeback to try to get it close and try to win, but they just fell short. So, and for me, I'd said earlier in the year that their running game was on track, and that was helping the offense out a lot. And it seems like the running game has fallen off in the last few weeks, and now the offense is starting to struggle again. So I feel like they have to get some balance and maintain that balance to be successful. Obviously, with New York playing better, with Daniel Jones being out, it begs the question of, should they stick with Tyrod a little bit longer and let Daniel Jones completely get healthy, or as soon as he's healthy enough to play, do they let him play? Because they looked better with Tyrod Taylor under center than they did with Daniel Jones. Obviously, Daniel Jones making a lot of money this year. That's a rough situation for the Giants to be in, but I think if Tyrod's playing well, let Daniel Jones sit a little bit longer, heal up, and try to get some wins. Just to backtrack a little bit, Cleveland, their defense is still playing really, really well. They gave up a lot of points yesterday, more than they have all season, but the defense is ultimately was a big key factor. I mean, Myles Garrett was making plays on defense. He made a spectacular field goal block in special teams. He's absolutely in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. And it's unfortunate for Cleveland because Deshaun Watson come in after missing 2 games, and he had the bye week in there. So he had 3 weeks of rest, come in, threw 5 passes, 1 completion, 1 interception, looked terrible. He did get hit in the head, so he got checked for concussion. Cleared protocol, they did not put him back in. And it's like, okay, did they make a mistake paying him what they did? Because it's going on almost a full year that he's been back playing, and he's not looked good. Like, he's had 1 or 2 games where he's looked decent, average, slightly above average, but he has not looked good. And to pay him that much money, and ultimately I think he's somewhat holding the team back. And it's like, you can get someone that's a lot cheaper and give you similar production or even slightly better production. It's like, what do you do? Do you try to trade him? Obviously, Kirk Cousins would be a popular trade target with him having familiarity with their head coach, and vice versa. But that's a tough call for Cleveland. They definitely have a championship caliber defense, could have a championship caliber offense with the right person under center, and they just don't have it. Detroit was a big letdown. Their defense did not play well, and some of that is due to Baltimore playing extremely well on offense. They got the game going early, and they were clicking right off the bat. It's the best their offense has looked in a really long time. And ultimately, I know a lot of people are talking about how good Lamar looked, and it's in my opinion, it's not necessarily how good Lamar looked, it's how good everyone around Lamar was, because there's been a lot of games that they've lost where Lamar has, looked good or done his job to the best of his ability, and the people around him did not. He got protection, He didn't have the drops like they've had recently, and everything just clicked. So if Baltimore stays healthy and if they play the way they did yesterday, they could be a factor in the AFC. Now, I'm not completely ready to say that because I still would want to see them play a healthy and efficient Cincinnati team to see how they do. Because I know early in the season Burrow hasn't looked good, but he's on the right track, and I'd like to see them play now that Burrow is in a different place. I'd like to see them play Cleveland with their defense. I'd like to see them play Kansas City, maybe Buffalo, and see how they look against some of these other teams before I'm really ready to say if they are potentially a contender in the AFC. Only thing really worth mentioning not much worth mentioning in the Atlanta game. Again, Ridder had some turnovers. Not all his fault, but he did have some turnovers. But he did lead them on a game-winning drive, and they won. You had two backups. You had Brian Hoyer and Bagent. I don't know the guy's name in Chicago, but he ended up playing very well, got his first win in the NFL when no one even thought he would be an NFL prospect. Brian Hoyer, now 0-13 in his last 13 starts. Did get Devontae Adams much more involved, but he was still frustrated in the press conference after the game, and it's one of the things where you hate to see, and I mean, I really hate to see his career going to waste in Oakland because he was a great receiver in Green Bay, and he has potential to be, talked about as, maybe a top 5 wide receiver all time, definitely top 10 all time, and really hate to see his career go downhill the way it's going. So I would love to see him get traded to a better team. I don't know if it'll happen, but we'll see. That was one of my preseason bold predictions of him trying to get traded or forcing him to trade. Somewhat of a Dumb and Dumber Ray Finkel moment in the Arizona-Seattle game where the holder did not turn the laces and Matt Prater kicked the laces in the game, and he was visibly upset on the sideline. So that was definitely a hilarious moment for me. And on to the Green Bay game. So Green Bay basically held scoreless in the first half. I read a stat where this first time since I think early 2000s or maybe even the 90s that they were held to less than 6 points in the first half in 3 consecutive games, and now that it's happened, they're the first team since like 2021 to do it. And really, the final score is not really indicative of how close that game was, because the second touchdown that Love had, he threw his first one to Dobbs. He targeted Dobbs on his second one, and Dobbs essentially bobbled it, batted it up, and Jalen Reed was right behind him and was able to locate it, get his hands on it, catch it, and it was a touchdown. But that easily could have been an interception and our drop pass, and it could have, essentially made the entire score of the game completely different. So a little bit of luck for Green Bay on that. And I don't really like living on luck. Sometimes you have to, but that was something that definitely could have changed the game. But again, like I'd said in my video yesterday, even coming out of the bye week, I didn't have a high trust level in LaFleur to make changes to the offense and get it playing better. I didn't have faith in Joe Barry to have the defense playing better. And I mean, Russell Wilson didn't have a crazy game passing, but again, Denver doesn't have good running backs. I don't think their offensive line is particularly that good, and yet they still put up 145 rushing yards on Green Bay. And their run defense has been the issue all year. And it's like 145 yards to a team with without a good running game? Like, what are we doing? So, again, it's getting a little bit breezy out here. It might start raining on me. Again, it's the run defense. It's Joe Barry, and again, LaFleur took so long getting the game going. I mean, our first 3 drives, I think we accumulated like 40 yards on our first 3 drives, and it's like 3 plays punt, 5 plays punt, 6 plays punt, and so you're looking at what, 14 plays, and we accumulated 40 yards. It's like 3 yards per play. Like, that's not gonna cut it. And I know Love's not playing well. He's not really, like, the late interception, I don't really fault him for that. Like, you're trying to take a shot, the game's on the line, you got to get something. But he really didn't plant his feet and drive that throw. He was like kind of bouncing. Like, he don't have the arm strength that Rodgers had to just rip it. He's gonna have to have good form and like plant and step, really put some power into some of his throws if he wants to go deep like that. Because he's kind of thrown short to Christian Watson throwing deep, so he's got to make sure he maintains his form. And he's not seeing the field all that well right now. He's not putting the ball in the right spot. He's not throwing it to the right people. I don't know if you want to attribute that to his development or to his coaching, but either way, it's really not working. I believe we play Minnesota next week. They'll be coming off somewhat of a short week, playing Monday night tonight, and they're without Justin Jefferson. If we can't beat Minnesota without Justin Jefferson, then our season's done. I mean, I think we're sitting at 2-4 right now, and going to 2-5 ain't gonna be good. So, yeah, still frustrated with Green Bay. Still love them, still my team, but we got to make some changes. I just watched the squirrel run down a power line. I was kind of hoping he'd get electrocuted. It'd been entertaining to see. Sorry, PETA. Anyway, one thing that we are seeing and not really talking about around the NFL is Kansas City's defense. Their offense has been their identity the last several years, and their defense has been their identity this year. Their defense has not given up more than 20 points in a game. I know Detroit did score 21 on them opening night, but the defense only allowed 14. One of those was a pick six, so that's not the defense's fault. But they have not given up 20 points in a game all year. Their defense is playing very, very well. And while their defense has played very well, it's given their offense time to figure things out and start to gain their identity. And you're seeing Travis Kelce having big games in back-to-back weeks. You're seeing some of these other receivers start to get more involved and more comfortable in the offense. You're starting to see Mahomes get more comfortable with them. You're seeing Pacheco running the ball extremely well. If Kansas City's offense continues to trend upward and start to gain some of that high-powered potency that it had last year and the year before, and their defense continues to hold people to less than 20 points, Kansas City's going to be hard for anybody in the NFL to beat, no matter who they are, no matter how good they are. So I think we should be putting a lot more respect on Kansas City's defense than what we are. And I think Kansas City should be striking fear in a lot of people's hearts right now. I think they are a very dangerous team right now. Lastly, we'll talk about the Sunday night game, Philly and Miami. I'd said yesterday, had Philly won last week, I was probably going to not pick them to win this. But since they lost last week, I thought they would be refocused, and that they were. They didn't have a particular great game running the ball, and I think that is more of their strength than their passing game, but they did have a very good passing game. Jalen Hurts did have an interception, not necessarily his fault. It was a batted ball, but as we know, those are credited to the quarterback, and everybody has them. Miami did have some self-inflicted injuries. Had a holding call on a Tyreek Hill touchdown. That was that's the difference in a touchdown and a field goal. Tyreek dropped a walk-in touchdown. Again, that's 8 points they left off the board there, which essentially would have changed the game. But Philly manhandled them at the line of scrimmage. Philly played Philly ball is what they did. They are built to manhandle people at the line of scrimmage. They're designed to win in the trenches, and that is what they did. When they got it, they went 4 for 4 on the brotherly shove, and I talked about this yesterday. I do not think it should be banned right now. It is a play that Philly is built for. Philly has the right people in place to win on that play, and you're seeing other teams try it and they're not succeeding like Philly is. It's because they are not built the way Philly is built on that. And again, like JJ Watt had said, and I agree with him, if you take the running back push out and just do quarterback sneaks, I don't think the success rate would be the exact same, but I still think they would have a very high success rate on quarterback sneaks without the shove aspect of it. But Philly really manhandled Miami. They were a lot more physical with them, and Miami was not able to just sit back there and be creative, and really they played smart defense. Philly did. They didn't. I think they studied film, which is what you should be doing, and I think they picked up on some things that Miami does and will say, okay, well, when they do some of these motions, we're not going to do this or this. We're going to handle it like this. And it ultimately allowed them to handle things a lot better than what other teams do. Because it's like if you let the motion cause too much of a distraction, or you cause over communication, then you have, I got a bee flying around me. You basically cause a distraction for yourself on defense, and that allows Miami to take advantage of it. And Philly didn't do that. Obviously, we had some close plays that could have went either way. Like Slay made that great interception at the end. That play very easily could have went the other way and been a big play for Miami, but ultimately Slay made the play, and Philly looked really, really good. Now, again, I do think the loss to the Jets was very good for Philly. I said that yesterday. That allowed them to refocus, and they come out last night and they looked like Philly is supposed to look. And A.J. Brown had a great game. Again, I've criticized him for his little outburst against Minnesota early in the season and how they have fed him the ball since. He's looked like a very good receiver since. He's had a very good production since. I'm still hesitant to say that was the right thing to do. As long as they keep winning and he's having good games, then that's really all that matters. But because of what is going his direction, it's causing everyone else to be less productive, and I would hate to see some of those other guys have a loss of confidence because so much attention of the offense is now going to Brown, and you get in a game where a defense takes Brown away and you've got to rely on Goddard or Smith, and their confidence is down and they don't pull through. That's my concern there. But ultimately, Phillies looked really good, and that bodes very, very well for them because they play a Washington team this week they should beat, and then they play Dallas in 2 weeks, which will be a very good game. And that's a game that Philly really needs to win going into their bye week if they want to be in a position to go, because Philly's got a really rough stretch after their bye. They've got a lot of good teams they're playing, and if you're wanting to win the division, step one is beating Dallas before the bye so that you can have the best possible record before you get into this brutal. I mean, Dallas is part of the brutal stretch of their schedule, but you're going to have to play them again. So winning the first time is very important, and being prepared for the gauntlet that they face is going to go a long way to winning the division and possibly the 1 seed in the NFC. It's going to be a close race between them and San Francisco. I think they play each other later in the season. I know beating Miami was a good step because that was a tough game on their schedule. They played Dallas twice. They're going to play Buffalo. Buffalo could be playing better by then. So, and I think they might. Yeah, they play the Chiefs as well. So they've got some very tough games coming up, and they need to take advantage of everything they can. And they're only a game ahead of Dallas, so beating them, making that 2 games, essentially 2.5. Well, I say that, not necessarily 2.5 because, they play again. But getting 2 games ahead of Dallas before their bye is going to be very, very crucial. So that'll be something to keep an eye on going forward. And as I said earlier, I have San Francisco in the Monday night game, and we will see how that goes. And we'll hit on some hot topics after we cover that video leading into the Thursday night game this week. And we'll pick things up tomorrow after the Monday night game. So enjoy Monday Night Football. Have a good day.